Let's dive into the discussions shaping the nation.
Minister, Donald Trump has called April 2nd Liberation Day because it's the day that he plans to launch a global economic war. Ireland will inevitably be impacted, but the extent had been unclear. However, last night we learned that Donald Trump has pharmaceuticals in his crosshairs. We love Ireland, but we're going to have that, he said, referring to our pharma sector. Trump's toxic love affair with the country could cost us dearly. Minister, given that pharma comprises around 100 billion or 45% of our goods exports, this is hugely concerning. The pharma industry and the people who work in it are a critically important part of our economy. We know tariffs will have a negative impact on Ireland. However, the ESRI has warned that the impact could be much worse if pharmaceutical products are targeted. The question now is, are we veering towards the worst case scenario that the government has modelled? That could mean the loss of up to 80,000 jobs and billions in lost trade. Now, nobody wants to be alarmist or cause unnecessary worry, but we must be prepared for whatever economic threat is coming. We must do whatever we can at home and through our engagement with the EU to cushion the blows. Minister, I don't think anything that the Taoiseach said or did in Washington a few weeks ago could have changed this outcome. Donald Trump is a megalomaniac who is convinced that tariffs will turbocharge the American economy. He won't or can't listen to facts, logic or reason. The government is in no way responsible for Trump's behaviour. You are, however, responsible for the reckless promises you made during the election. The country went to the polls just 4 months ago, and it was obvious at the time from Trump's election that there was huge economic uncertainty. Despite this, Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil spent the election promising tax cuts and large spending increases. The Social Democrats warned you that this was a reckless approach. You have now admitted that these tax cuts may never materialise. Minister, as a small, open economy with huge trade with the US, Ireland is more exposed than most. How the EU decides to retaliate to Trump's tariffs will have a huge impact on Ireland. The question is, as a small member state, how much input do we have into the EU response? As Eurogroup President, what is your insight into this, Minister? Can you tell us about any plans for supports for impacted industries? And do you now regret making populist promises during the election that you are already rowing back on?
Minister.
Thank you very much, Deputy, for ultimately during this week raising what is a very, very serious economic challenge that this country confronts. I note that you raised it in a very political context, so let me respond back first before I then deal with the substantive issue regarding the threat and difficulty our country could face in our response back. What I have in front of me is your alternative budget for 2025. And what I attempted to do in looking for this is see what reference or recognition you give of jobs, of the competitiveness of our economy. I looked at Section 1, I couldn't see it. I looked at Section 2, I couldn't see it. And I had to go all the way down to Section 15 of your alternative budget to find any reference to jobs and how we support our economy. And having scrolled all the way down through to Section 15, I did indeed see a reference to jobs, a simple increased funding for Enterprise Ireland. Didn't see any reference to the IDA, the organisation who's involved in helping us combat all of this. I looked at the tax changes that then you were proposing, and let me remind you of them before I deal with the charges that you've made against us. Removal of the refundable element for unused R&D tax credits, the very R&D tax credits that play a role in supporting businesses within our economy. Abolishing entrepreneurial relief on capital gains tax at exactly the time we want our entrepreneurs to do more. Phasing out the Special Assignee Relief Programme, the programme that many of the decision makers are on who lead the companies that are based here in Ireland. That is your political commitment. That is what you were indicating. Now, in relation to what my own party said, and indeed the parties that make up this government, we were very clear during debates, in our manifestos, and crystal clear in the programme for government that Fine Gael, Fianna Fáil and independent politicians negotiated, and it's laid out in black and white. We outlined what we would do in the event that we could avoid exceptional economic difficulties, but we were honest in indicating what could happen. And we then went on to say that in the context of this, and this was made crystal clear in a number of debates, the state would act and the government would act to protect the public services that we have available, to protect our tax base, and to look at how we could support jobs within our own economy. We showed honesty in answering that question. I wish you could show the same in putting your question to me.
Thanks, Minister. Deputy O'Callaghan.
Minister, you were crystal clear in the election that you were going to deliver tax cuts. You're now being crystal clear that they are off the table. And we called you out on that. We called you out on that during the election campaign, that I was irresponsible and reckless. But I have asked you serious questions here about the response on tariffs, and you haven't answered. How the EU decides to retaliate to Trump's tariffs is going to be critically important to Ireland. Because we're a small open economy with huge levels of trade with the US, we are particularly exposed, Minister, and you know this, and we're much more exposed than other countries. If the EU retaliation brings into the trade war industries and sectors which are important to Ireland and which are not already targeted by Trump, this is going to have a detrimental impact. So I'm asking you, Minister, are you confident that the EU will take this sufficiently into account in terms of deciding how to retaliate? This is important for the country. And how will the industries most impacted by this trade war be supported?
Minister.
I noticed, Deputy, that I stood up and I was willing to defend my record. I noticed you weren't willing to do the same in your points to me. That's very clear. And in terms of answering the question, the government laid out last week our analysis of what the impact of this could be in our economy. And in many occasions, both within the Dáil and elsewhere, we've outlined three priorities. Our first priority is how we engage with the United States of America, which we acknowledge, and you in honesty do too, the difficulty of that kind of engagement. Secondly, what we have made very clear is the engagement that is now underway from Ireland to our partners within the European Union and what an appropriate response could be. And thirdly, what the government has been doing for many years and will continue to do is look at the measures that can be put in place to strengthen our budget and to strengthen our jobs and our enterprise economy. I can only say that we approach all of this with budget surpluses that you were always against.
Your time, Minister.
And the set-up of funds and the use of those funds. Oh, I answered your question very clearly regarding what we would do.
Conclude,
I welcome the Social Democrats finally recognising the value of an enterprise economy.
Thanks, Minister.
Like, share, and subscribe, and let us know your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear from you.